Astonishment, deep sorrow, and profound reflection are the emotions that wash over me. After researching and learning about more than 100 Black public figures connected to the ultimate hidden corners of faith, gender, and the harsh prohibitions within the world of gospel music. Hello everyone, we are our Memory Vault, and this is the video 15 Gospel Legends Who Hid They Were Gay Until Death. This greatly impacts how we view the history of religious music, as well as the heavy price paid by talented souls, and it might just leave you stunned. This video is perfect to play while you are resting, enjoying a meal with your family, or doing chores around the house. All the information in this video has been carefully researched and gathered from multiple sources. If there are any oversights, please leave a comment below to help our channel continue to grow. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and ring the notification bell to receive updates on our latest videos. Now, let us step right into the stories of our first figures. Chuck Berry. Although honored worldwide as the great chief architect who laid the foundation for rock and roll music, few know that the musical roots and the heartbeat of Chuck Berry's soul were planted deep within the sacred foundation of the church and gospel music. Young Chuck Berry grew up in a devout family in St. Louis, where the hymns raised every weekend honed his storytelling skills, his mastery of rhythm, and especially his ability to guide the emotions of a crowd. However, when reaching the peak of fame in the 1950s, he had to face an incredibly harsh reality, the extreme scrutiny of society toward a highly influential Black man. Through a sociological lens, Chuck Berry, keeping his personal life and the hidden corners of his soul strictly confidential, was not merely a preference for privacy, it was a mandatory method of survival. In an era where racial and moral boundaries were drawn by unforgiving prejudices, his caution was the only shield to protect his safety and his career. In an entertainment world where all eyes were focused on his every move, and any deviation from moral or gender standards could lead to the collapse of an empire, he chose absolute silence regarding sensitive aspects. Chuck Berry was not directly entangled in public controversies about his sexual orientation like many of his contemporaries, but his life is the clearest reflective picture of the immense pressure of respectability politics. He locked his most secret thoughts and deepest internal conflicts inside his masterful guitar playing and rebellious lyrics. He had to brace himself to wear a masculine standard exterior before the public to ensure his music could continue to be broadcast on white-owned radio stations while also avoiding rejection from his very own religious community. For audiences who have experienced the many ups and downs of life, his story evokes a profoundly deep reflection on the price of greatness. Sometimes, the most explosive and liberating musical notes are raised from lips that must be bitten tightly to keep unnameable secrets. Chuck Berry's greatness lies in a heartbreaking paradox. He knew how to use music to liberate the bodies and spirits of millions globally, yet sorrowfully kept for himself an inner world full of mystery closed off by the invisible barriers of the era. His legacy is not just the legendary duck walk, but also an agonizing question about the true freedom of artists when they are forced to sacrifice their most authentic selves in exchange for the crowd's acceptance. Little Richard, the Great Rebel. Little Richard is the clearest and most tragic embodiment of a fierce internal struggle between religious faith and the human ego. Born and raised in a strictly devout family in Georgia, church music was his first language and his only safe haven. When Little Richard shook the globe with his passionate roars, driving rhythms and boundary-breaking performance style, he was actually bringing the very fervent flame of gospel into the secular music world. Yet behind the heavy makeup, sparkling outfits, and proud pompadour hair was a soul bleeding from extreme tearing. In an era where carrying Black heritage and a homosexual orientation was considered an unforgivable offense, Little Richard had to use his very eccentricity as a shielding armor, distracting public opinion from the fragile truth inside him. His life consisted of relentless cycles of oscillation, draining his strength between the blinding lights of the rock and roll stage and the solemnity of the preaching pulpit. There were times when the desire to live true to his gender urged him to immerse himself in his own world, experiencing same-sex romances in the shadows. but immediately after the ghost of the teachings from his childhood would rise again, bringing with it the ultimate fear of spiritual condemnation. He repeatedly and abruptly cast aside all peak glory to become an evangelist, loudly denying himself on television and condemning the very community he once belonged to. Through a humanistic philosophical perspective, Little Richard's contradiction was absolutely not fakeness or a gimmick. Rather, it was the desperate cry for help of a person trapped between two irreconcilable worlds. On one side was spiritual salvation, demanding self-denial, and on the other was the physical and mental desire for freedom. Little Richard's pain reminds us of the horrific destructive power of dogmatic prejudices when they strip a person of the right to self-acceptance. He dedicated to humanity the most liberating melodies, performances full of vitality and joy, yet never truly found a single day of real peace for his own soul. For those who have crossed into middle age, this story brings a profound empathy regarding the invisible burdens people must carry. Little Richard burned himself in the flame of contradiction to light up music history. He leaves behind a massive legacy, not just immortal songs, but a monument to the ultimate sacrifice of an artist who spent a lifetime yearning for love, but was always haunted by guilt. If the agonizing tear between faith and identity of Little Richard leaves much sorrow, the brave against the current decision of James Baldwin right up next will surely make you reflect. Please continue to accompany us. James Baldwin. Although not a singer standing on a pulpit to sing hymns, the great writer and human rights activist James Baldwin possessed a gospel rhythm that flowed through every vein and every page of his writing. As one of the greatest minds in American literature, Baldwin grew up in an incredibly strict Pentecostal family in the slums of Harlem and was a preacher himself when he just entered his teenage years. The resonance of the church, the hypnotic power of prayers, and the fear of divine wrath were ingrained in his bones, shaping his driving, sharp, and highly morally weighty writing style. Yet in complete contrast to musical legends who had to choose to hide in the shadows to protect their careers, James Baldwin made an incredibly brave decision, a landmark act in the 1950s. He publicly revealed his true sexuality to the whole world. This absolute authenticity placed him in a highly thorny and lonely position. He not only had to confront a white social system rife with racial discrimination, but was also shunned by his very own religious community and black civil rights movements, who viewed his existence as a weakness, something going against the faith. Through a deeply analytical lens, Baldwin's sharp novels and essays were his secular hymns. He did not deny the value of faith. Instead, he used his pen as a powerful tool to expose the hypocrisy of those who use the name of the divine to sow alienation and hatred. He argued fiercely that a true church must be a place that shelters and embraces vulnerable lives, not a Supreme Court dedicated to suffocating human truth. His coming out was an act of ultimate resistance, proving that a person can simultaneously have a holy soul and live true to their sexual orientation. James Baldwin's presence in this historical picture is a deeply sorrowful yet incredibly proud reflection for artists who had to remain silent. By daring to step into the light, refusing all compromises, and accepting to bear all public scrutiny, he left a great truth for posterity. True holiness does not lie in blindly following dry dogmas, but lies in the courage to dare to live a full, kind, and proud life with the identity the Creator bestowed. For mature audiences, James Baldwin's life is a costly lesson in the integrity of human dignity. He taught us that the price of the truth may be very high, but the price of living a fake life will erode and incinerate the entire human soul. Billy Preston. Billy Preston is admired and respectfully hailed by the whole world as a once-in-a-millennium musical genius. He is the only person honored as the fifth member of the Beatles and is the soul behind the masterful keyboard playing of countless musical legends from Ray Charles to the Rolling Stones. Like his great predecessors, Billy's roots were firmly planted in the fertile soil of gospel music. From the age of 10, young Billy was already a phenomenon in churches, using his small hands to create sounds with the power to soothe wounded souls and connect people with the spiritual world. However, upon stepping into the glamorous entertainment world and rising to the peak of fame, he had to face an invisible tragedy, devastating his life from the inside: the absolute silence regarding his homosexual orientation. In the 60s and 70s, the music industry might have worshipped outstanding talent, but it was incredibly cruel and tolerant of discrimination against personal differences. For a black man to publicly reveal the truth about his sexuality meant personally tearing up lucrative performance contracts, being banned from all media platforms, and most painfully being expelled from the churches that once praised him as a darling child of God. Under that massive and suffocating pressure, Billy Preston chose to lock his heart away. He continued to bring the world melodies overflowing with optimism and a fierce love for life. Yet when the brilliant stage lights went out, when the applause of tens of thousands of audiences faded into the void, he trudged back into an ultimate loneliness with no public shoulder to lean on. From a psychological perspective, having to hide oneself for an entire lifetime, constantly acting in front of a crowd and not being allowed to hold the hand of the one you love under the sun created irreversible mental traumas. The resentful loneliness and the suppression of an unnamed love pushed him into negative paths, devastating his health and casting a melancholic shadow over his final years. The story of Billy Preston is a highly bitter coda touching the deepest part of compassion within each of us. Behind the musical notes that captivate humanity, there is sometimes a bleeding heart that has to sacrifice its greatest personal happiness to protect the very existence of the artist's title. He traded earthly love to leave behind immortal keyboard melodies for the world, a silent sacrifice for which music history forever owes him a profound word of gratitude. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, respectfully hailed by posterity as the godmother of rock and roll sister. Rosetta Tharpe was an ahead-of-her-time phenomenon, a woman who personally shattered all rigid boundary lines between art and religion. Born into a devout family with strict dogmas, she was incredibly bold to carry an electric guitar, an instrument once considered by church officials as the embodiment of secular rebellion, straight into the solemn sanctuary. Her sharp, wild guitar riffs, combined with a fiery, authoritative voice, shaped the entire landscape of modern music, directly inspiring immortal icons like Elvis Presley or Chuck Berry. Yet behind the absolute freedom and proud demeanor she displayed on stage, Sister Rosetta's real life was a highly sorrowful epic about the imprisonment of the ego. While her music untied millions of people, her own heart was imprisoned by a secret she never dared to utter. Deep same-sex romances that had to permanently remain in the shadows. Through the lens of sociological analysis, America in the 1930s and 1940s was an incredibly harsh era, especially for black women. They were suffocated by a strict double-standard system from both the church and a white-dominated society. For a female gospel artist to publicly love another woman did not just stop at a media scandal. It was considered an offense that could lead to the deprivation of all honor, career, and even personal safety. Aware of the danger constantly surrounding her, Sister Rosetta chose to pour all her frustrations, her desires for love, and her internal torments into her guitar strings. The sound of her guitar was not merely music, it was the sobbing cry of a suffocated soul. Her having to reluctantly step into cover marriages with men, despite knowing they would fall apart just to soothe the scrutinizing eyes of public opinion, is a heartbreaking testament to the hypocrisy of the era she lived in. The story of Sister Rosetta Tharpe brings an incredibly aching reflection for audiences who have passed half their lives. The pioneers who paved the way for humanity are sometimes the ones who have to grope alone in the darkest night of their own lives. She used all her vitality to smash the chains of traditional music, yet was powerless before the chains of prejudice binding her love. Her legacy is not just the musical notes that shook the world or transcendent dance moves, but also a tear-soaked historical lesson about the far too expensive price of greatness. It forces us to sorrowfully realize that the most blinding glory is sometimes traded by the fact that a person is permanently not allowed to live true to the very beats of their own heart. The tearful sacrifice of Sister Rosetta Tharpe is a sorrowful low note, but the secrets buried behind the glamorous throne of the gospel king, James Cleveland, coming up, will truly expose the cruelty of fame. Please do not take your eyes off the screen. James Cleveland. James Cleveland is not merely a great singer. He is a true monarch, an outstanding architect who designed and built the entire massive structure of contemporary gospel music. As the founder of the Gospel Music Workshop of America, GMWA, he permanently changed how church choirs operated, turning tedious prayer services into stages overflowing with intense emotion. With a majestic, serene stature and a warm, powerful baritone voice, James Cleveland appeared like a prophet, bringing comfort, faith, and direction to tens of thousands of Black believers across America. His music had the power to heal shattered souls. However, behind that glamorous throne and ultimate authority, the king of gospel music hid an inner world full of cracks, a private life that had to be kept strictly confidential at all costs to survive in a highly conservative and judgmental religious system. Throughout the mid-20th century decades, Black churches set incredibly strict moral standards, especially for men carrying the heavy responsibility of spiritual leadership. Any deviation from standard masculinity or sexual orientation meant being stripped of the pulpit, boycotted from recording contracts, and expelled from the sacred realm they had served their whole lives. Through an analytical, psychological perspective, James Cleveland found a highly great but also deeply tragic method of survival. He did not choose direct confrontation or utter a confession. Instead, he personally molded his pains, secret desires, and ultimate loneliness into massive vocal harmonies. Masterpieces like "Peace Be Still" or "God Has Smiled on Me" were not merely hymns praising the Lord. They were the heavy sighs of a person struggling to bear unspeakable suppressed feelings. When hundreds of voices in the choir simultaneously raised soaring, overflowing notes, that was when James Cleveland was borrowing the voices of humanity to cry for his own fate. His silence about his private life was not deceiving the public or cowardice. It was a mandatory armor he had to wear to protect the sacred flow of music. The story of James Cleveland leaves a profoundly deep reflection for posterity. A person can possess enough strength to soothe the pain of millions of souls, bringing light to countless dark lives, yet hopelessly fail to find a single peaceful place to confess their own wounds. James Cleveland's greatness lies in the fact that he sacrificed personal happiness, turning extreme suppression into a healing art for an entire community. He departed taking untold secrets with him, leaving behind a great musical legacy, but also a heartbreaking reminder of the harshness of prejudice. Clara Ward. Clara Ward is the most brilliant and powerful embodiment of glamour theatrical artistry and feminist strength within the sanctuary. As the leader of the legendary family group the Ward Singers, she used her hands to smash all prejudices about the simplicity and somewhat resigned humility often seen in religious music at the time. Clara brought to the stage sparkling sequin dresses like Hollywood stars, proudly high-styled hair, and a dramatic, explosive performance style, turning every hymn into a grand play soaked in sweat and tears. She possessed a magical allure, a voice containing horrific inner strength capable of silencing an entire massive auditorium before even uttering the first note. Yet behind the elaborate makeup, behind the radiant smile always blooming on those lips, Clara was living in a suffocating glass cage of fame, where her every move was monitored and scrutinized by a society always waiting to bring talented Black women down. In a gospel ecosystem full of curiosity and strictness from the 40s to the 60s, successful, independent, high-income women with strong personalities like Clara Ward were always the center of malicious rumors. The truth about her same-sex romantic relationships, the deep vibrations backstage, always buzzed in the underground artist circles. But before the light of the public, she permanently maintained a steel silence. Through the lens of sociological analysis, this absolute silence was an instinctual defensive reflex, a smart but also incredibly sorrowful survival strategy. For a black woman in that era, holding a family music empire privacy was the only shield that helped them survive. Clara Ward understood better than anyone that with just one deviated admission, the entire empire that she and her authoritarian mother had painstakingly built would shatter to pieces under the cruel judgment of the parishioners overnight. To relieve the frustration of an imprisoned soul, she had to choose to pour all her suppression and resentment into the sobbing vibratos and breathtaking vocal runs of the song How I Got Over. That song rang out like a heroic anthem of victory over adversity, but deep inside it carried the tearing pain of a person having to continuously overcome the cruel barriers of her very own community. Clara Ward's life is a costly lesson on sacrifice and women's strength. Sometimes to earn the right to stand at the peak and sing praises of spiritual freedom, an artist must accept securely, locking the door to their heart. She turned silence into the sharpest weapon to protect her dignity, leaving behind an eternally proud image, regardless of the storms of worldly gossip. Walter Hawkins. Walter Hawkins is a monument representing a highly important transitional generation, a solid bridge between the flow of traditional gospel music and the contemporary beats of soul music. His music carried a completely different flavor, not loud, not screaming to show off, but carrying a clarity, gentleness, and a profoundly miraculous healing power. His great hit, Going Up Yonder, became a priceless, spiritual medicine, soothing earthly pains, sowing seeds of hope, and keeping company with countless generations in the most desperate moments of life. However, behind the calmness, warmth, and the dignified, exemplary demeanor of a minister on the pulpit, Walter Hawkins carried deep within him hidden corners regarding his sexuality that he decided to never dare reveal to the light of the public. He lived and dedicated himself in an era where expectations of standard masculinity in the Christian church had become solid fortress walls that could not be knocked down. In the 1970s and 1980s, the religious music community placed a massive and suffocating moral pressure on the shoulders of male leaders. A difference in sexual orientation was not only considered a moral deviation by public opinion, but was also fiercely condemned as a severe betrayal of the sacred faith. Acutely aware of the cruelty of these unwritten rules, Walter Hawkins chose to retreat deep inside his own shell. He maintained a completely closed private life, rarely answered interviews about his personal affairs, and absolutely never let internal conflicts show on mass media. Through a philosophical lens on human life, Walter Hawkins's discretion was not an empty void, but a purposeful suppression, a highly disciplined arrangement to protect greater values. Instead of using words to explain to a world that was inherently unready to listen, he dissolved his vulnerabilities, his desires to be truly loved, into every smooth, poignant melody of the music. When he raised his voice singing about a peaceful place up yonder, it was not just a desire for a religious heaven after death, but also an agonizing dream about a present world where people are no longer judged or punished for their own differences. Walter Hawkins's story brings a deeply sorrowful yet very proud stillness. He dedicated an entire lifetime to comforting and guiding lost souls, yet bitterly took his own secrets with him into eternity. He leaves us with an unceasingly aching question about the true price an artist must pay in exchange for earthly peace. Carl Bean. Carl Bean is not merely a renowned singer of gospel music. He is a towering symbol of courage, a rare lighthouse that dared to illuminate the darkest zone of discrimination within the church. Born in Baltimore, he was favored by the Creator with a wonderfully inspiring voice, to the point that he signed a prestigious contract with the legendary Motown record label. That was an unprecedented achievement at a time when all images of black artists were incredibly strictly controlled. Yet instead of obediently following the rose-paved path prepared by the music industry, Carl Bean made a decision that shook an entire ideology. In 1977, he released the song I Was Born This Way. This action was not only revolutionary, but it was almost a career-ending move in mainstream gospel music, directly exposing the hidden corners no one dared to touch. The song quickly became an iconic anthem at underground clubs, but at the same time, it cruelly slammed all doors of major churches to him. Through the philosophical lens of human life, Carl Bean's reaction to the community's rejection is precisely what constitutes his enduring greatness. Unlike colleagues who had to grit their teeth and retreat into the shadows, disguising their identity to protect their livelihood, he chose to stand tall under the brilliant sun, facing bitter criticisms from the very people who once called him a brother. In Christ, Carl Bean understood that a faith that forces a person to deny their own body and true feelings is a distorted faith. He did not turn his back on religion, but decided to rewrite the definition of salvation using his own life full of ups and downs. In 1982, turning pain into action, Carl Bean personally founded the Unity Fellowship Church movement in Los Angeles. This was one of the first Christian denominations to publicly open its arms to welcome people from the LGBTQ+ community, a direct challenge to the cruel structure of churches that always preached love but practiced exclusion. Carl Bean used his very own bleeding wounds to build a warm common home for thousands of lost souls. His life is a brilliant testament showing mature audiences that true faith does not lie in blindly following dry dogmas. It lies in daring to use your own truth to widen the boundaries of compassion, even if the price to pay is isolation. Thomas Whitfield, hailed by posterity as one of the most refined and erudite musical minds that gospel music has ever produced. Thomas Whitfield brought to the world a kind of art that went far beyond ordinary praises. He was an outstanding composer, a masterful arranger who elevated religious music into symphonies that were personal, intimate, and touched the deepest layers of human emotion. His classic musical works like I Love the Lord or The Throne Room did not explode or scream to show off, but unfolded slowly, peeling back every layer of emotion and exposing the fragility and weakness of the human condition. Churches across America were mesmerized by Thomas Whitfield's music because it provided a space of absolute tranquility for people to converse with their own souls. However, behind the perfection in art and the professional, highly closed-off working demeanor was a Thomas Whitfield bracing himself to bear a massive, invisible pressure. In the 1970s and 1980s, gospel culture set extreme standards for masculinity and spiritual authority for choir leaders. A man standing on the conductor's podium was not allowed to have any complexities regarding his private life, especially doubts about a homosexual orientation. From a psychological analysis perspective, Thomas Whitfield's absolute silence about his personal life was not apathy or arrogance, but a deeply sorrowful method of self-defense. Any unverified rumor had enough power to wipe out a career built with youth blood and tears. To survive and continue contributing, he chose to encode his inner self. Thomas Whitfield entrusted all his desires for love, his internal struggles, and even his silent tears into the complex structure of his harmonies. When a song rings out like a confession without needing words, that is precisely when the artist is using music as the only escape for their truth. His incredibly sudden departure at the age of 38 due to complications related to AIDS is the most tragic low note in music history. It leaves a haunting stillness, forcing older audiences to personally reflect. How many great truths, how many desires for love had to be buried under a perfect shell? Simply because this society was once not tolerant enough to grant them a chance to breathe the air of freedom. Dorothy Love Coates. Dorothy Love Coates is one of the most resolute, definitive, and uncompromising voices in the entire history of hymn music. Born in the turbulent land of Birmingham, Alabama, she emerged in an era where female gospel singers were always expected to maintain a demure, measured attitude and absolutely submit to the male-dictated traditions of the church. But Dorothy bluntly smashed those suffocating molds with her very presence. Her performance style was incredibly sharp, full of authority, and completely unfamiliar with the concept of fear. Audiences came to hear her sing not just to have their souls comforted, but to be awakened by a direct, powerful energy source like fiery manifestos about life. The fact that a black woman dared to stand up and display independence, autonomy, and authority turned her into a shining star, but at the same time made her the target of the strictest surveillance from the religious and social systems of the time. In the mid-20th century years, prominent, strong women who frequently toured far from home like Dorothy always had to live with malicious rumors about their private lives, especially doubts revolving around her homosexual orientation. Yet facing the storm of public opinion, Dorothy never wasted a single breath or a single word to correct, clarify, or explain to the public. She built an iron wall of silence, completely separating the crowd's curiosity from her private world. Through the lens of sociological analysis, Dorothy Lovecoates' silence absolutely did not stem from cowardice or inferiority, but was a highly wise, strategic move by a woman carrying the bravery of a warrior. She thoroughly understood the cruel rules of the game of her era. The moment she opened her mouth to explain, she would lower herself and fall into the trap of the world's gossiping tongues, thereby having her musical preaching career permanently stripped away. She would rather let the world gossip endlessly in vain than lose the microphone, the only weapon that helped her transmit strength and liberation to tens of thousands of other women. Dorothy Lovecoates left a massive legacy, proving to us that a woman's authority does not need to ask anyone's permission, and true dignity always shines brightest in selfless stillness. Bessie Griffin. Bessie Griffin possessed a rare voice, carrying the transformative power of space, encapsulating the richness, power, and deepest vibrations of the human realm. Born and raised in New Orleans, she was steeped in a cultural context where gospel music did not just stop at prayer songs, but was the only life preserver for the black community amidst the era of severe racial segregation. Bessie's singing voice contained all the endurance-tearing pain and immortal hope of human beings. Donning glamorous, elegant outfits and possessing a soaringly confident demeanor, she appeared as a true queen on stage, attracting every gaze and the admiration of thousands of believers. By her very presence, Bessie Griffin strongly challenged all limits regarding the image of a traditional devout woman who was always imposed by society to be humble, submissive, and suppress personal emotions. Her explosive, vibrant presence on stage and maintaining an independent, autonomous life made her the center of countless curious and judgmental eyes. Like her contemporary sisters, Bessie was surrounded by silent, buzzing backstage rumors about her personal love life and same-sex relationships. However, absolutely no one could find any proof whatsoever, and she never allowed those baseless rumors to shake the foundation of her great career. Through the lens of human philosophy, privacy for artists like Bessie Griffin is not just a privilege, but it is an ultimate form of self-defense to protect their artistic life. She skillfully built an invisible yet solid boundary, clearly distinguishing between the transcendent spiritual world on the performance podium and the personal world backstage. Audiences could feel her rich pains and life experiences through every one of her vibratos, but they had to accept a truth that there are hidden corners of the soul that should never be dissected using words. By choosing absolute discretion, Bessie Griffin protected her voice from the stain of gossip. Her life is a perfect testament to the wisdom of a generation of great female artists, standing tall before the storm, yet knowing how to hide the weakest beats of the heart into the unseen realm. Ruth Davis. Ruth Davis is the soul and the most powerful driving force behind the Davis Sisters, one of the most influential gospel groups with the deepest emotional delivery capabilities rising from Chicago in the 1950s. Born into a working-class black family, she grew up amidst a highly turbulent era where religious music was not only a spiritual refuge, but also the public voice of resistance for communities struggling under the yoke of racial segregation. Ruth Davis's voice was incredibly sharp, commanding, and filled with urgency. When she sang, it was not merely leading a melody, but she was preaching sermons forged from the very painful experiences of life. Audiences listened to her, not just to seek gentle comfort. They were awakened by a direct energy source demanding they face their own hidden corners. Songs like "He's Working It Out for You" became a solid spiritual anchor for countless lives struggling with adversity, illness, and the uncertainty of the future. On stage, Ruth Davis always radiated an authoritative aura and absolute control qualities that brought her ultimate respect, but simultaneously attracted countless scrutinizing critical eyes. In a gospel culture that always placed women under strict surveillance regarding behavior independence and moral standards, a strong woman like Ruth naturally became the target of rumors. The truth about her personal life and same-sex romantic relationships was always a topic whispered backstage, but there was never any confirming document, and most importantly, Ruth never wasted a single word to respond. She deeply understood that in an era where just one baseless rumor could cause an artist to have all their church performance schedules canceled and be expelled from the music industry, silence was precisely the only and most impenetrable armor of protection. Through a philosophical lens on human life, Ruth Davis's life poses a deeply sorrowful question for audiences of an age that has witnessed many ups and downs. When a woman's voice carries such massive power, does society's insecurity stem from what she is hiding, or from the very fact that she resolutely refuses to surrender? History has proven that the 50s and 60s gospel music world demanded spiritual authority from artists, but stripped them of the right to exist as independent individuals with full worldly desires. For Black women, public independence was often maliciously equated with insolence. Faced with that cruel choice, Ruth Davis chose iron discipline over confiding. She allowed her music to speak for her, turning long sustained notes and anguished phrasing into the language of endurance. She departed leaving a great legacy, proving that people can absolutely raise the most truthful voice about faith and strength, even when the truth about their heart must be permanently buried deep. Wilmer, Little Axe Broadnax. Wilmer, Little Axe Broadnax represents one of the most complex, silent, and fiercely resistant stories in the entire history of gospel music. Born in Houston, Texas in 1916, Broadnax grew up in a deeply devout environment where church music acted as both spiritual discipline and a cohesive community identity. Possessing a soaring tenor voice as smooth as velvet and precise to every emotional vibration, Wilmer naturally became a perfect fit for the art of quartet harmony, one of the cornerstones of traditional Black gospel music in the mid-20th century. He rose to the peak of fame as a key member of the Highway QC's, one of the most respected male quartets of the time. The group's disciplined sound, polished performance style, and spiritual authority placed them at the center of every stage, large and small. Unlike solo stars who always want to attract all attention to themselves, Broadnax's role in the music group was defined by balance and subtlety. His voice blended smoothly and flawlessly into the whole, uplifting and reinforcing the strength of the entire band rather than overpowering those around him. From a psychological analysis perspective, this wonderful musical instinct was also a mirror reflecting how he carefully navigated his real life, incredibly quiet, carefully calculated, and always keeping himself at a safe distance. In a world with no room for difference, where any sign going against gender and moral norms could lead to the deprivation of all honor and livelihood, figuring out how to live true to one's identity was a life or death puzzle. Broadnax spent most of his life closely guarding his identity and personal relationships, building an impenetrable fortress wall to protect his inner world from the judgmental eyes of a harsh religious system. The legacy Wilmer Little Axe Broadnax left behind is a highly agonizing reflection on the price of greatness. His choice of silence did not originate from shame or guilt, but it was a masterful survival strategy. Music became the only language for him to freely express himself, a sacred sanctuary where the deepest emotions could be revealed without needing to be explained to anyone. Every harmony note, every chord carried precision, control, and suppression, the most vital qualities allowing him to survive both on stage and in the shadows of life. It was not until his passing in 1992 that the truth about his life was gradually revealed, not as a scandal, but as a profound reminder. It proves that gospel history was not only written by echoing voices of praise, but was also built by lives that had to silently hide resiliently, maintaining the flame of passion, even though the truth about themselves had to permanently retreat into the realm of secrecy. Closing the 15 stories behind the halo, we understand even more deeply that the true value of a person does not lie in superficial judgments or sparkling halos, but in how they resiliently preserve their identity and true love against the countless cruel prejudices of the era. We wish you always have truly warm, peaceful, and joyful moments around the dinner table with your beloved family. If this video brought you meaningful reflections, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to continue receiving profound content from our memory vault. Goodbye for now.